Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Worth Your Time, Worth Your Money, an ongoing series where I have a look at the opening hours of new and upcoming games. So this one's a little bit of an exception. Well, much like the last one, I've got my hands on an early preview press demo build. I assume it'll probably roll out, in the near future around a Next Fest or something like that. But for now, this is probably safe to say alpha, pre-alpha, something like that, of Menace, which I'm very excited about because it is developed by Overhype Studios, who are most well known for their Battle Brothers game, which I've played the living crap out of. It's excellent. As far as warband management games, it's probably the greatest of the lot. I mean, close second would be War Tales, and people can fight over which one's better, but you get the idea. It is at the very primo top pedigree of that immersive and emergent storytelling by running a band of, warriors, as it were. And so they've partnered with Hooded Horse, and, I've given this a go. And what do I think? I think it's got potential, which is interesting, right? There are probably three reactions you would get from someone like me, a turbo fan of Battle Brothers. One is gushing and just saying they've knocked it out of the park. Two would be abject disappointment. And three is what we've got now, right? Where I can see that it's clearly the follow-up to Battle Brothers, but I'm not 100% super convinced yet. And I think more time with it, especially with the actual building from nothing, from point zero up, because they've given you essentially a pretty robust warband, as it were, with, you can put points in and all that. So it's all a bit overwhelming because it's a slice of, essentially halfway through someone else's game. I'd love to see how, I mean, unless of course this is how a new game would start, in which case it's still quite overwhelming. But you can see the moving parts. There's actually a lot in common with Battle Brothers, which you might not necessarily see looking at it. I think one of the talking points that some people pushing back on this is like I suppose you could say art direction. Sometimes people have a difficulty with the suspension of disbelief between something that's kind of board gamey by design and, when you look at it, it's going to look a little bit different. So you've got these dudes inhabiting individual squares in essentially a large 3D map, and they'll be standing in the middle of the sand shooting each other in a perfect square formation. What this reminds me of is some of the tabletop board games that I actually grew up with. Things like Epic 40,000 comes to mind, actually, which was a scaled up, much larger version of 40k. It was more about, tanks moving in squadrons and that. And this kind of reminds me of that. And from that, you get these sort of unintentionally cute kind of things happen when the bad guys roll up in their sort of warband battle buses to like armor shock the point that you're on. And I just find all the designs a little bit dinky and, kind of cute, to be honest. But having said that, it is incredibly violent and gruesome. And if you do get caught in the open, no cover, not hunkered down, because that's a big part of this game by the look of it, and the enemy is lined right up to just mow you down, you're going to get your dude's arms and legs and heads blown off, and it's very gruesome. So like I said, this is only a surface level look at what would be an incredibly complex game. I like what's there. I like the moving parts. I wonder how well in the long term it will be received, and how its transition from explicitly a melee-based game with a ranged element, as opposed to, flipping the switch. This is very much range, though perhaps you have to look at it through a different lens. Every different weapon that you equip your squads with have different stat lines at effective range, right? And some of the more submachine gun type things are like most effective at like one square away. There is no melee in this, and each weapon set has a number of uses. That's how ammo works in this. And if you do just plink away from range over time, you will run your gun out of ammo, and then you're kind of up shit creek as far as I can tell, unless you bring some sort of special gadget or whatever. But there's so much going on, it was hard to get to the root of it. But it's not like you have sword dudes in this apocalypse. It's all guns, but I feel like it might be a case of the user, read me, having to consume and interpret it a bit differently and look at things like submachine guns as, you know, a one square adjacent melee weapon. I feel like that might make it a bit more palatable. But I like all the art design and what you zoom right in, there's quite a bit going on there. Like, don't get me wrong, it depends if you're a glass half full or half empty kind of person. I'm trying to be even because I have a few concerns and it didn't knock me out of my seat, but at the same time, I did enjoy it. I think it's very solid. It's one of those things, it will always forever suffer the curse of being the spiritual successor to Battle Brothers, which is an excellent top tier game. And so anything short of excellent will give people a moment to pause. But once I got into the rhythm of it, I really, really did like it. Even with some of my squads that I hadn't tricked out so much, like before you do a run onto a planet, you can up the amount of guys that you can have in a squad, but that seems to be based on a reserve that you have. So like I've used up all my extra dudes in a squad, and then you equip them like one gun and they all have the same gun, and it also has the little symbol of your unit locking out that gun as well. So it's actually not really, I was gonna say it's not as fiddly as Battle Brothers, but that might not be the best framing. Okay, let's scrub that. Let's try this again. The idea in Battle Brothers, you have individual dudes and you'll give them like a two-handed axe and you'll level him up or what have you, right? And each individual guy in your warband has their own kind of RPG, you know, armor, gear, stat lines, that sort of thing. So in this, it's almost scaled up. Remember I mentioned Epic 40k, in that a unit is more like that individual dude, in that it will be a named character and they all seem to be voice lined and that as well. So I wonder if it's going for a very fixed set of half a dozen characters and that's the same for everyone. That'd be a bit disappointing, to be honest. Or maybe they're actually going to voice 100 different characters. A girl can dream, right? But that's a pretty interesting, but that would be kind of excellent if that's what they did. But at the moment, they seem to be going for named individual core characters, which is a big difference. And within that character, that they represent a unit. So it'll be like the first Spaceborne Rangers with a named dude at the center, and you can add up to, I think, probably 8 more dudes, because then they stand almost like the face of a dice, right? So you can have, within that little grid square, 9 units, 9 guys, 8 fodder plus the main core dude in 3 rows of 3, if that makes sense. So they stand in this little 3x3 formation within a grid square. It's very neat and tidy. If you equip, say, I don't know, an SLR type rifle to that squad, every dude gets it. That's pretty much it. I'm pretty sure you have to pay like this supply cost for each guy that has it, so equipping it to a squad with 2 dudes would be cheaper than a squad with 9 dudes. And then you can give them a support weapon as well. And a lot of those weapons require them to set up or, you know, hunker down is what I would call it. And it's where they can spend a nominal amount of their bar to siege tech a la StarCraft 1. There's a reference. And they set up, they can use the special weapon, the heavy weapon, you know, sniper rifle, rocket launcher, whatever. But if they want to move, they have to reverse locking down and move around. So equipping your dudes is deceptively complex, but then you start to realize that it is just individual squads represent individual Battle Brother mercenaries with fodder units attacked onto them. And then in the actual game tactical map, you just move around, you try and sit behind cover. From what I understand, cover is just cover from, like I said, a board game perspective. So you could be sitting behind a bloody 14-foot wall, but I think that just still counts as cover. The enemy can still see you, they can still shoot at you, probably with great penalty. I don't think anything is truly impenetrable. I'm not sure, there are some big cliffs that maybe, but for the most part, it's just about a board gamey way of looking at things, which funnily enough, Battle Brothers was exactly the same. However, the art style, I feel like it was just a little bit more palatable. And we've gone a little bit full circle. I think some people will look at this and be a bit flabbergasted by how the cover system, the units and the way that they move. And I think that's just the artistic design and choice, where they've moved away from arguably a much more cartoonish look. Don't get me wrong, I love Battle Brothers, and it can be very gruesome and full on and very detailed, but it does sit more in this realm of more cartoonish than what Menace is going for. Menace is moving that needle more in the realism direction, and I think that will exacerbate some of the heavy lifting that your own imagination has to do when it comes to, these are ultimately board game pieces like a chessboard moving around and you have to fill in the gaps. Even though it might not look super sensible, 9 dudes in a perfect square in the middle of a desert fighting a dinky truck. Anyway, I realize as, I've done this video and I think back on it that this might seem a bit mixed. I'm still very excited about it. I'm happy to put my hands on it. The big takeaway is it is actually very close to Battle Brothers in feel, but it has flipped the switch. It's more on, futurism shooting than melee, but I do feel like if I get a bit more of a go with a bit more of a bigger build, I'll come to realize things like, short-range submachine guns are the surrogate melee weapons, and maybe that's how you want to do it actually, almost just pretend it is melee Battle Brothers. So Menace, yes, very exciting. It's coming out later this year, I suppose, that's what they tell me. Gotta be nice if they actually put it into full release. I'm getting sick of Hooded Horse putting everything into early access. It drives me a little bit bonkers, to be honest. Anyway, that's enough from me. Menace. Get excited for it, and at the very least, reinstall Battle Brothers or pick it up. Easily one of my favorite games of all time. Anyway, team, much as leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.